In the grand, violent theater of 16th century Europe, few figures cast a longer or darker shadow than Catherine de' Medici. She was an Italian noblewoman thrust into the heart of the French court, a mother to 3 kings, and for nearly 30 years, the most powerful woman in a kingdom that was tearing itself apart. Her name became synonymous with intrigue, assassination, and poison. History branded her the Black Queen, a Machiavellian villain who supposedly orchestrated one of the most horrific massacres of the age. But behind the legend, the truth is more complex, and maybe even more terrifying. This is the story of a ruthless politician who was also a tireless negotiator for peace, a lavish patron of the arts, and a suspected architect of mass murder. A calculating ruler who used her own children as pawns in a desperate game for survival. She wasn't born a monster. She was made one, forged in the fires of personal humiliation and political chaos. It's late August 1572 in Paris. The city's bells are tolling, but not for prayer. They're ringing for a slaughter. The streets, slick with blood, echo with thousands of screams. Just days before, the city had celebrated a royal wedding meant to heal a divided nation. Now, a frenzy of religious hatred has been unleashed. At the center of this blood-soaked storm, in the Louvre Palace, stands one woman, the Queen Mother, Catherine de' Medici. History would forever chain her to this event, the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, labeling her the Serpent Queen, a puppet master who ruled through death and deception. But was she really the monster her enemies claimed? Or was she a pragmatic leader, a protective mother pushed to the absolute edge in an age of unforgiving brutality? To understand the Queen blamed for such a horrific act, we have to go back in time to the vulnerable orphan she once was. Catherine de' Medici was born on April 13, 1519, into the most powerful and illustrious family in Florence, the very heart of the Renaissance. Her father was Lorenzo de' Medici, Duke of Urbino, her mother a French noblewoman. For a fleeting moment, she was the heiress to a world of unimaginable wealth, art, and influence. But that world vanished before she even knew it. Within a month of her birth, both of her parents were dead. Her mother from a fever after childbirth, her father from illness. Catherine, the so-called Duchessina, or Little Duchess, was left a wealthy, titled, and profoundly vulnerable orphan. Her childhood wasn't spent in some quiet palace nursery. It was a whirlwind of political instability and constant danger. As a child, she became the most valuable pawn in the brutal chess game of Italian politics. Raised by a string of relatives, including 2 popes from the Medici clan, her fate was tied to the shifting fortunes of her family. When the Medici were overthrown in Florence, an 8-year-old Catherine was taken hostage, a living bargaining chip for her family's enemies. She was shuffled between convents, a gilded cage where she was, for all intents and purposes, a prisoner. Yet in the strange calculus of her traumatic youth, Catherine would later remember these years among the nuns as some of the happiest of her life. A brief island of peace in a sea of political storms. In the convent, she received a formidable education. The nuns disciplined and trained her, and she developed a lifelong passion for literature and science. She was honing her survival instincts, learning to be observant, humble, and obedient, while the world outside decided her fate. Her value, she knew, wasn't in her mind, but in her marriage prospects. And her uncle, Pope Clement VII, knew exactly how to use her. He saw in his orphaned niece a key to a powerful alliance. The chosen suitor was Henry, the Duke of Orleans, the second son of King Francis III of France. In 1533, at just 14 years old, Catherine de' Medici was married. The ceremony was a spectacle of Medici wealth, a clear message that even though she came to France an orphan, she didn't come empty-handed. She charmed her new father-in-law, the king, a great lover of all things Italian. For a moment, it seemed her turbulent childhood had found its fairy tale ending. She was no longer the orphan of Florence. She was a princess of France, but the security was an illusion. A year after her wedding, her powerful uncle, the Pope, died. The new Pope refused to pay the rest of her massive dowry. The grand political alliance her marriage was supposed to cement simply evaporated. Suddenly, Catherine was just an Italian merchant's daughter in a court of ancient French nobility. Her value had plummeted, and her position was fragile. The game of survival had only just begun. Life at the French court was a masterclass in humiliation, and Catherine was its star pupil. For the first decade of her marriage, she was a queen, in name only. Her husband, Henry, wasn't cruel, but he was distant. He was completely wrapped around the finger of another woman, his mistress, the elegant and intelligent Diane de Poitiers. Diane was nearly 20 years older than Henry, a beautiful widow who had been asked to tutor the shy young prince. Their bond grew into a lifelong affair that completely eclipsed Catherine. Diane de Poitiers was the true queen of Henry's court. She wielded immense power, controlling court appointments, signing official documents, and soaking up the honors and gifts that should have been Catherine's. Henry even gave Diane the magnificent Château de Chenonceau, a castle Catherine desperately wanted for herself. He had his and Diane's initials intertwined on royal insignia. In a final, galling twist, the interlaced initials of Henry and Catherine, an H and a C, formed a perfect D, a constant public reminder of Diane's power. Catherine was sidelined, an outsider in her own court, forced to be cordial to the woman she privately called the whore. Her humiliation was made worse by a crisis that threatened her very position, her infertility. For 10 agonizing years, she couldn't produce an heir. In a world where a queen's primary job was to secure the dynasty, this was a catastrophic failure. The whispers at court grew louder. There was talk of divorcing the Baron Italian. In a strange turn of events, her greatest rival became her unlikely savior. Diane de Poitiers, fearing a new, younger wife might steal her own position as Henry's favorite, realized she was better off with the quiet, overlooked Catherine. It was reportedly Diane who encouraged Henry to visit his wife's bed, and after a decade of anxiety, Catherine finally conceived. Between 1544 and 1555, she gave birth to 10 children, 7 of whom survived to adulthood. This flood of royal babies secured her place, but it didn't win her husband's heart. She remained in the shadows, watching, learning, and waiting. While Henry and Diane held court, Catherine observed the intricate dance of power, patronage, and betrayal. She saw how influence was won and lost, how loyalty was a commodity, and how a woman could rule a king's heart, if not his kingdom. She kept her feelings locked away, a quiet, watchful presence. Then, in the summer of 1559, everything changed. During a jousting tournament, King Henry II was horrifically wounded when a splinter from a lance struck him in the eye. For 10 agonizing days, he lay dying. As he faded, he called out for Diane, but Catherine, finally making her move, denied his mistress access to his side. When Henry died, Catherine de Medici, the long-suffering wife and invisible queen, stepped out of the shadows. She was 40 years old, and her true reign was about to begin. The death of Henry II instantly transformed Catherine's world. Her eldest son, a frail 15-year-old, became King Francis II. Though he was technically old enough to rule, Catherine immediately positioned herself as his chief advisor, leveraging the political experience she had quietly gathered for years. But her son's reign was tragically short. After just 17 months, Francis II died from an ear infection in December 1560. The crown passed to her second son, Charles, who was only 10 years old. France now needed a regent, and Catherine was determined it would be her. Right away, she had a rival, Antoine de Bourbon, King of Navarre, who, as a prince of the blood, had a strong claim to the regency. It was here that Catherine showed her political cunning. In a masterful stroke of diplomacy, she cut a deal. Antoine would renounce his claim to the regency, and in return, Catherine would secure the release of his imprisoned brother. Antoine agreed. The Privy Council officially named Catherine Governor of France, giving her sweeping powers. She had outmaneuvered her rivals and seized control. The kingdom she now governed was a nation on the verge of self-destruction. The Protestant Reformation had fractured the country, creating two armed and hostile camps: the Catholic majority, led by the powerful Guise family, and the growing Protestant minority, known as the Huguenots. Catherine, a devout Catholic herself, initially pursued a policy not of persecution, but of pragmatic moderation. Her main goal was to preserve the crown's authority and the stability of her family's dynasty, not to wage a holy war. She believed peace could be found through compromise. In 1562, she took a monumental step, issuing the Edict of Saint-Germain. This decree was a landmark act of religious tolerance, giving Huguenots the right to worship publicly outside of towns for the first time. It was a bold attempt to find a middle path and defuse the ticking bomb of religious fanaticism. But her hopes for peace were shattered just weeks later. On March 1, 1562, the Duke of Guise and his men attacked a congregation of Huguenots worshiping in a barn in the town of Vassy, slaughtering dozens of unarmed men, women, and children. The Massacre of Vassy ignited the French Wars of Religion, a series of brutal civil wars that would bleed France for the next 30 years. Catherine's policy of tolerance had failed spectacularly. She found herself steering the ship of state through a hurricane, playing factions against each other and shifting alliances to keep the monarchy from being consumed. She became, as one historian noted, a tireless negotiator for peace, even as war raged around her. She also began using her children as strategic assets. She understood that royal marriages were the currency of international power. She married her daughter Elizabeth to the powerful King Philip II of Spain and spent years trying to arrange a match for one of her sons with Queen Elizabeth IV of England. Most fatefully, she began planning a marriage between her youngest daughter, Marguerite, and the young Protestant leader, Henry of Navarre. She hoped a union between a Catholic princess and a Huguenot prince could finally seal the peace. But Catherine's faith in compromise was eroding. In 1567, she and King Charles IX were nearly captured in a Huguenot ambush known as the Surprise of Meaux. The royal court was forced to flee in disarray. The event left Catherine profoundly shaken and deeply paranoid. This perceived betrayal marked a dark turning point. Her desire to negotiate began to curdle into a desire for repression. She had tried to be a peacemaker. Now she was starting to consider a more permanent and more brutal solution. By the summer of 1572, Catherine's grandest diplomatic project was finally happening. She had arranged the marriage of her daughter, Marguerite of Valois, to the Protestant king, Henry of Navarre. This was meant to be the ultimate act of reconciliation, a union designed to stitch France's two warring faiths together. In August, Protestant nobles flooded into the staunchly Catholic city of Paris for the wedding. The city was a powder keg of tension, but Catherine hoped the pageantry would usher in a new era of peace. The wedding took place on August 18th. Just 4 days later, an assassin's bullet struck the Huguenot leader, Admiral Gaspard de Coligny, wounding but not killing him. The shot came from a house owned by the Guises, Catherine's Catholic rivals, but the Huguenots immediately suspected a deeper plot, maybe involving the Queen Mother herself. Panic gripped the city. The furious Huguenots demanded justice, while the Catholics, led by the Guise faction, feared retaliation. Paris was on a knife's edge. What happened next is still debated by historians. The traditional story, fueled by her enemies, paints Catherine as the malevolent mastermind. In this version, fearing a Huguenot uprising or just seeing a golden opportunity, she convinced her hesitant son, King Charles IX, to authorize a targeted assassination of the Protestant leaders. The plan was supposedly simple: kill Coligny and a few dozen others to decapitate the Protestant movement. But the plan, if it was a plan, spiraled out of control with terrifying speed. Once the killing began before dawn on August 24th, the pent-up hatred of the Parisian mob exploded. Catholic citizens, spurred on by the Guise faction, began a general slaughter of every Protestant they could find. The targeted killings morphed into a citywide massacre that lasted for 3 days and spread across France, leading to the murder of thousands upon thousands of Huguenots. So, did Catherine order the massacre? The truth is murky. Some historians argue she only authorized the initial hit on the leadership in a panicked response to a perceived coup, never intending the widespread slaughter that followed. They point to her years of trying to broker peace as evidence that such brutality was out of character. Others maintain that Catherine and her council made a cold, calculated decision to eradicate the Huguenot leadership while they were all trapped in Paris. In the aftermath, the court first denied, then claimed responsibility, declaring it was necessary to stop a Huguenot plot. For the Protestant world, this was an admission of treachery. The wedding had been a trap. Legends spread of the wicked Italian queen inspecting the bodies of the dead. While there's no real evidence she did this, the image stuck, and the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre became her dark legacy. The massacre didn't crush the Huguenots. Instead, it plunged France back into an even more vicious cycle of war. Catherine's life became a relentless struggle to hold on to power for her sons. Her relationship with them was as much a political tool as it was a maternal bond. 3 of her sons would become kings of France, but none would secure the Valois dynasty. Charles IX, the king who authorized the massacre, was reportedly haunted by the slaughter until his death in 1574 at just 23. Catherine then became regent again, waiting for her favorite son, Henry, to return from Poland, where he had been elected king. Henry III became king, and while he was more intelligent than his brothers, he was also erratic and relied heavily on his mother. Catherine remained the driving force of the government, but even her skills couldn't hold the kingdom together. The extremist Catholic League, led by the Guise family, grew so powerful it threatened to usurp the throne itself. Her children were both her obsession and her instruments of state. She doted on Henry, sparking intense jealousy among his siblings. Her daughters were married off for political gain. When her daughter Marguerite, Queen of Navarre, embarrassed the family with public affairs, Catherine's wrath was absolute. She had her own daughter effectively imprisoned, a stark display of her willingness to turn on her own family to protect the crown's reputation. But beyond the blood and politics, Catherine left another, more beautiful legacy. As a true daughter of the Medici, she was a magnificent patron of the arts. She brought Italian culture, cuisine, and fashion to France, shaping the monarchy's identity for generations. She commissioned grand architectural projects, like the Tuileries Palace, and hosted lavish court festivals that were legendary. These spectacles weren't just for fun. They were political theater, designed to project an image of a magnificent and stable monarchy at a time when its very existence was at risk. Catherine de' Medici died on January 5, 1589, at the age of 69. She had outlived all but one of her 10 children and had spent 3 decades fighting to preserve her family's crown. But her hopes were in ruins. Just 7 months later, her last and favorite son, King Henry III, was assassinated. With his death, the Valois dynasty ended. The throne of France passed to the very man she had once tried to unite her family with through marriage, the Protestant Henry of Navarre, who would become King Henry IV. So who was Catherine de' Medici? Was she the Serpent Queen, a wicked foreigner who corrupted France with her Italian plots? Or was she a brilliant political survivor who did what was necessary to guide France through one of its darkest chapters? Protestant historians of her time certainly painted her as a villain, a reputation that has stuck for centuries. Modern historians see a more nuanced figure, a woman who ruled in a man's world, who tirelessly negotiated for peace, but was willing to use ruthless violence when she felt her family and kingdom were threatened. She was a queen of contradictions, a peacemaker who endorsed a massacre, a patron of beauty who presided over an age of horror, and a mother who used her children as pieces in a deadly political game. Her story is a chilling reminder that in the unforgiving world of absolute power, the lines between hero and villain, savior and serpent, are often drawn in blood. What do you think? Was Catherine a monster or a misunderstood monarch forced to make impossible choices? Let us know your verdict in the comments below. And if you want to explore more dark tales of royal power and intrigue, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell.